Arizona's #1 talk show. Welcome to Outspoken with Bruce Gaydos. A busy hour, #1.
Oh, the best of the hours, I can tell you that. A lot of people say it.
A flurry of executive orders coming out of the White House. You heard Becky Lynn talk about a few. Joining us now from Washington, D.C., Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego. Senator Gallego, how are you today?
Pretty good. Pretty slow and boring.
Yeah.
Before we get to all the stuff of the shutdowns of some of this money, the new breaking story that we want to hit you on right away. Trump offers all federal workers a buyout with 7 months' pay in an effort to shrink the size of the government. Are you for or against that?
Well, I mean, I don't really think about the government as big or small. I think about it as services, right? Are you going to deliver the services you need? For example, the largest employer is the VA. Do I want the VA to shrink in its services and the amount of people there? No, because you still need to deliver services. If you could do it with less amount of people and still deliver the services you need to veterans like me and still save money, then yeah, okay, there's something to work at. But this is nothing that we can just kind of quickly jump to and say it's going to be good or bad. This is the kind of things that you need to make sure you're studying because this has real-world effects on people.
Yeah, to say the least, I guess. And it's unclear, and again, most of it is unclear, how many people
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, how many people would take a voluntary buyout? Would they choose to leave of their own volition and take whatever monies were available?
And what's the quality that you're replacing it with, right? Because, we've all had different jobs, and you've been in jobs where someone's been there for 20 years and just knows, the job like a master. And sometimes you do find people who've been there for 20 years and they're just kind of skating, right? But you want to make sure whoever is at that job, especially if it's a federal job that's taking care of U.S. citizens and their concerns, they need to be doing the job well, because that is what the first demand you have as a taxpayer is. You want the government to be effectively and efficiently representing and working for you. Not necessarily, just anybody can really fit that role.
Senator Ruben Gallego is joining us from D.C. Also, Trump administration froze federal funding for almost all government programs. And so, when you look at this, 72 million Americans were locked out of their health insurance today. Federal assistance to individuals regarding Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, that's supposed to not necessarily be affected. What do you make of this? Because the first thing I heard from you is that children will go hungry. What do you mean?
I mean, first of all, this is the kind of thing that happens when you're just trying to be, tough, right? This caused chaos. There was no warning ahead of time. There was no working with Congress. It likely is illegal, especially for the stuff that we have voted on and appropriated. And in some areas, it's going to cause problems. People that rely on programs such as Meals on Wheels. For example, there's also other programs where veterans receive services through nonprofits that are also receiving contracts with the federal government. School lunch program was up in the air. And now, we've seen the administration kind of pull back and say, well, that's not what we meant. My concern is that, number one, you need to be communicating to, the public what you are doing. By going this fast, you're causing chaos and you're causing distrust. And this is when it's important where the administration comes and works with us. We're here to work with the administration. We are the ones who appropriated this money. We're going to go and deal with the budget in about a month when we deal with the continuing resolution. So work with us instead of doing this chaotic movement that ends up causing a lot of distrust among everybody and potentially cut services to people that really, really need it. Housing services, senior services, first Head Start, all this kind of stuff that was just unnecessary. And it was just a power play that ends up hurting everyday Americans. It doesn't hurt me as an elected. It hurts everyday Arizonans.
We're talking to Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego. Did you hear from constituents on specific things that were impacted, places they could not access because now we've got the courts involved, and honestly, I don't even know where it is right now.
Yeah, so we had a bunch of number one text messages that just came directly from me. The specific on Medicaid was the first stuff. There was just other questions just started moving through. Veterans that are going for their VA home loans had questions if they were going to get their programs fulfilled. We had other nonprofits that are just up in the air and they just don't have any answers. But again, this is the problem with government, and it's not just the Trump administration. I think this happens in other administrations too. You need to be consistent and you need to be stable, because when you cause instability, it causes people to doubt your effectiveness. And that's when people don't want to deal with you, with your entity, with your business, especially if your biggest supplier or your biggest supporter is the federal government.
If something like this were to stay in place, the Phoenix Police Department, Phoenix Fire Department, they would lose. I think it was somewhere about $35 million in funding. What would that mean for the police and the fire? What does something like that mean if they were to lose that money?
Well, what it means is higher taxes for everybody, because number one, they shouldn't lose that money. I want to be clear about this. You know, a lot of this money is the money that I appropriated, Senator Schnell before me, Senator Kelly before me, Congressman Stanton. We appropriated for our police and fire because Arizonans, we pay our federal taxes, and we want that money to come back to things like public safety, because we don't have enough police officers in Arizona, especially in Phoenix. We are understaffed when it comes to fire. That means that if we don't cover that cost, it's going to end up being the city of Phoenix taxpayer that's going to end up having to come up with that, because we still need public safety. So essentially, they're going to get double tax. You're going to pay the federal taxes, but not get the full return on the money they paid. But there's no way that the city of Phoenix would allow any of this to be possible, not have enough police coverage. So they'll just end up raising taxes to pay for essentially the chaos that President Trump caused.
Senator Gallego, let me play the other side of this. Does Trump just want to look at the books? Does he want to look and say, you know what, government spending is completely out of hand, wasteful spending every day. Let's take a look and really see what we actually don't need. Is that what he's doing here? And if so, why is that such a bad thing?
Look, I think it's always healthy to making sure government is efficient. And I think the president can do that, has a right to do that, but he has to do it through what we have designed in our Constitution. He needs to work with his Republican House, his Republican Senate, to craft a budget that actually prioritizes those ideas of his that he ran on, that he voted on. But doing this is irresponsible. It's not leadership. It's causing chaos. And so he didn't end up having that end result. He is causing chaos among the country, and it's an unnecessary way for him to do this. But again, if he wants to do that, there's nothing wrong with that. He is legally under the Constitution his right to work with the Congress, to the Senate and the Congress, to create a budget and to cut what he wants to cut if it concurs with the House and the Senate. But this is not the way to do it. He doesn't have the right to do it. And again, he's not being a good leader by causing chaos across the country.
Senator Gallego, can we pivot a little bit to, I guess, yesterday's story, which was immigration raids happening? Yeah. And what is your take on at least what you're seeing and what you've heard so far?
So far, we're not going to go and start running with our hair on fire, because so far what we're hearing is that there's largely been targeting of deportations of people that have criminal records, which they should be deported, or people that have final orders to be deported, which, again, they've gone through the due process. They should be deported. What I want to make sure doesn't happen is two things. Number one, we caused so much chaos that, for example, our agricultural growers we're hearing are having a tough time keeping workers coming in. These are people that aren't being targeted. They're largely good people. They work very hard hours. They work, very important jobs in terms of agriculture. But now they're afraid to come in, and their kids aren't going to school. The other thing that I'm very worried about is that I've talked to some of my friends in the ATF, the DEA, and HSI. And the administration, in order to pump up the numbers, they're taking these agents from all these other departments, people that are doing drug investigations, people that are doing, gun smuggling, people that are doing money laundering investigations, and they're making them essentially ICE agents. I don't think that's the best use of their time, their money, and their training, and what's happening to all these other investigations. And again, this is why I've been very insistent to this administration, come and work with us. We will work together to come up with a proper immigration border security plan where we will go after the bad guys. We will fund the programs, the more ICE agents, the Border Patrol that we need to secure this country. But by doing this, you're potentially putting a lot of investigations at risk. and it's so expensive in the long run, it may not even be sustainable for the president's plan to do this. And lastly, statistically speaking, looking at deportations over the last 4 years, there hasn't been that much of an increase from what the president is doing than from what Biden has been doing. It's just costing more money. So it looks cool. It's great that you're using people in camouflage, and it looks really tough that you're putting people on military planes. But the sending people to Colombia and Mexico military planes is actually more expensive than sending them in the charter planes that we used to send them in for the last 4 years. And that's a good example of basically not using your money smartly for an end result that we all can agree on.
Senator Ruben Gallego is our guest. Do you know of raids happening in Arizona, A, and B, should ICE be allowed to go into schools?
I don't know of specific raids that are happening in Arizona. ICE agents before Trump, during Biden administration, and now during Trump, have been carrying on raids, quote unquote, but basically going after people that they have warrants for or have deportation orders. So I don't think that's changed. They haven't, from what I understand, seen any raids on workplaces or anything of that nature. No, you should not send anybody to a school or a hospital to find people that are here illegally. Number one, you're going to affect that whole school. There are kids that are just, without a doubt, in mixed status. And I know this, I live in South Phoenix. I see my community. There are parents that are here in this country illegally, but their kids are here legally. We want those kids to continue to go to school. It is never good in our society for kids not to be in school. When you're scaring them away, you're going to basically start, tearing apart these communities. When you start, going to hospitals, for example, that means people are going to stop going to hospitals to get the services they need. Potentially, you could potentially increase, infectious diseases, all these kinds of things that people are trying to avoid being arrested. And then just lastly, look, we're Americans. We still have a soul in this country. There are ways for us to work together to deport bad people, to deport people that maybe just got here and have no reason really and have no roots to this country. I think there's a reason we should also be deporting those people.
Yeah.
But for these people that have been here for more than 20 years, 10 years, they have a house, they have a business, they have family, they have kids that are U.S. citizens or have a spouse U.S. citizen, let's at least be smart about this. Go after the bad guys. And let's figure out a way to be more humane to those people that could potentially be, residents here in this country.
Senator Gallego, we appreciate your time today. By the way, do you ever trip up and call yourself congressman still? Is it like,
I do, actually.
writing 2024 in your checks or anything, Okay. Senator Gallego, we appreciate your insight into this. And I have a feeling we'll be talking again soon.
Gracias, guys. Have a good one.
All right, there you go. Arizona's newest Senator Ruben Gallego with his take on a variety of things that are going on right now.
You and I have talked to him a couple times after his win, I think on his first day.
Yeah, it was a day he was sworn in.
Very different Ruben Gallego today. Tone, very different. Opinion. How do I say it? He ain't happy with what he's seeing right now.
Okay.
That's just what I took.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's fair.
And I don't think it has to do with the raids, because the raids have been fine. They're not going into schools. They're not doing that.
I think
if they were to do that, I'd sit here and tell you I've got a big problem with that.
I think he has a problem with veterans having a problem getting service. It's always been a hot button issue for him being a veteran.
Yeah, and for him to speak up about, you know what? Even if you like Trump out there and you voted for him, it's chaotic right now.
Right.
But I'm sure you like it, and that's
unless
fine.
it affects you,
and that's fine.
Unless it affects you, and then you're like, wait a minute,
it could affect everyone.
Yeah.
So.